This conference will now be recorded.
6:34. And so we need to establish a quorum first. Christine? Craig?
Here.
Loris?
Here.
Brandon? Brandon, are you on yet?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Brandon?
Okay, perfect.
Neil is absent. Hines?
Yep.
Okay, we're here. It's good. Announcements. I hope I brought my paper. May not have it. Let's see. I just want to say in the announcements that I sent everybody a Open Meetings Act for the new employees and new commissioners. And so Hines sent me his, and I will have that retained and send it to the administrative office. Because chairman come and go, but the administrative office will be there. But if you, when you took your training, you got a certificate, and if you would forward that to me, I'll make sure that we have it on file. Royce was good enough to, Hines was good enough to tell me that I should be keeping it on file. And so David said I didn't need to send me his, but we'll take it and put it and file it.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is Hines had said that he might want to consider being secretary. I don't have that on the agenda this week. So I'm just month, but next week will be on the agenda. If anybody wants to be secretary and take over doing the notes, then that's fine with me. I don't have a problem doing it. I enjoy taking them, but if anybody feels like the chairman shouldn't be taking them, then we'll have that conversation next week. Let's just remember that the Open Meetings Act tells us we can't have a conversation outside of a regular meeting, public meeting. So let's be careful about that. That's all the announcements I have. Do we have any public comments? There's no one here. Any public comments up there? No. Okay, so let's go right in and consider old business. So if everybody has their, let's consider the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes as presented with a few minor corrections.
Okay, any seconds?
I second. These are the corrections that I instructed.
Yes. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, perfect. The next thing we had on the agenda was the possible action on the extension for the variances on the 4 squares banners, and still no one has shown up. Now, since that's on the agenda, I'm going to make some comments about that. And I hope Nino will show up if they want those banners up again. The last time, a year ago, in March, I think, of 20, we approved, he asked us for an extension from 30 days to 3 months. And we approved that extension, folks. So what happened then, I think, because the banners stayed up all year, and I wondered why that was happening, and I asked the city council if they had given him an additional permit, and they said no. But when I went back and began to research that, in the UDC code, it says that you can get permits for banners can be issued either individually, which would be a 30-day permit, or on an annual basis. So if it's on an annual basis, it says that you can be, a single banner may not be erected for more than 30 days in a calendar year. This time does not apply to the school. Banners shall not be placed on any site more than 4 times within a calendar year. That's the annual permit. But if you look at the fee schedule ordinance, it says that a sign permit application fee for single banners and other temporary signs are $50. A permit application for an annual banner permit includes 4 banners for $100. Now, the sign permit does not say 4 banners for 30 days each banner, but that's the norm. If you got a permit, you would have a banner for 30 days. So when they got an annual permit, that banner would be up for 30 days, then it would go down, and then they could put up that banner or a different banner after that 30 days, but they can only put that up 4 days, 4 times a year. Well, when we get in the extension to go to 3 months, the banner stayed up all year. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. I just want to bring that to everybody's attention because I think that I didn't realize that when we did the variance, and as long as the commissioners say that that's what they want to do, and because I even asked him, and it shows in my minutes, asked him last year, what if somebody else wanted to put a banner up, such as what the Historic Commission wanted to put up, and he said they could do that if they set up a timeline where they would be able to control those banners. Well, if they're going to be up for a year, you can't put another banner up. So anyway, I have some questions about that. Y'all can look those policies up and we'll have that discussion. So just be thinking about how you want to handle that. I just didn't realize that, and I kind of feel like I got the wool pulled over my eyes because I didn't research it enough. But I didn't go back to the sign permit issue either, and didn't realize that you could get an annual permit. So shame on me.
How long was the variance that we had agreed to?
What we said was he asked for a 30-day variance, the UDC code says 30 days.
Okay.
He asked for a variance for 3 months, which we gave him. So at the end of 3 months, then he got an annual permit. So at the end of 3 months, then he got the next banner, in the next 3 months, and the next 3 months, and so on. So that's what happened. Okay. So we'll table this because he isn't here, so we can't discuss that with him, I guess, until he comes or somebody comes and talks to us about that. I noticed the banners are still up, so.
Just say in the meanwhile, those banners continue to be up.
Well, the banners are still up, and so the only thing I know to do is to call Kelly. I just wanted to discuss it with y'all before I did anything, but then I will call Kelly and tell her until he comes and renews the permit, he has to take the banners down, does he not? Do y'all agree with that?
When did we grant the variance, Susan?
I should have written that down. It was on July the 6th of 2020.
Thank you.
I mean, as much as I like the banners, I think they serve a nice purpose, but I think, the code says certain things and that obviously has expired, so.
If we let one person or one commission or one committee violate the UDC code, then what holds it up? And so that's my point. Whether we
So
let
we
it
need to
happen or not
enforce.
is a whole different subject.
It establishes a bad precedent, I think.
You can't do to one and not do to the other. Okay, so that's taken care of. Okay, so the next thing is,
Well, let me just make a comment on that, because we've been through this thing with banners like with the church. Now, is the church, are the churches and the school districts, are they exempt from this?
churches are not, to my knowledge, the churches are not. But the banner that you have, as I read in here, and I would have to look at the permit that y'all received for that, You can have an annual permit for a banner that is attached to a wall, which is what you do.
Yeah.
And so that's a different thing than what we have on these banners that are hanging from these poles.
Okay. Yeah, wall banners different from.
Yes. Yes.
Well, technically, I guess what you have on the church is a sign that is attached to the church. It's not a banner.
Right. It's a sign, yeah.
It's not like a
Yeah.
banner.
Does Blanco, just for curiosity's sake, does Blanco also have banners, that go across the street?
No, not unless they go to the city's council and they have to come before us,
Okay.
and it's
So we
not
don't have
allowed. It's
locations
normally
for
not
them.
allowed. They have to be a variance.
Okay.
Usually that's put up by, what, PEC?
Well, I didn't go into that too much because I was into so many other things, but there are restrictions on any banners over 281. And so I didn't go into, because we've never had that come before us, and
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody's asked that question. I guess I could research it, or you
No,
could research
no,
it.
I was just curious whether we
Yeah.
have it like, we've lived outside of Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg has these street banners here across 290, on a regular basis.
It's not, that isn't in the UDC code,
Okay.
just
Okay,
to be up
good.
there.
Thanks.
But actually what you need to do is you need to pull the sign regulations,
Yeah, sign ordinance.
the sign ordinance that we have.
Yeah.
Because the stipulations are in here, whereas the UDC code lacks some of those basic just stipulations and designations between the different banners.
Yeah.
It goes into some detail, but not all of it.
Okay, thanks.
I spend half my time wondering which ordinance I need to look at. Which is one thing that Chris is talking about, like when we're talking about these banners, she's talking about anytime that we have an ordinance, it should be noted in the UDC code along with whatever section that is in, so that we'll know we should go back and pull that banner before we make any decisions on a permit that's coming for us.
Usually as a footnote or as an attachment to the back, and, numbered attachment to the back.
But that's not on here, so we're not gonna talk about that right now. Okay, so this number 2 is consider, discuss, and take possible action on updating updating the zoning ordinances. Zoning ordinances. So do you have anything, Chris, for zoning ordinances?
My thoughts for zoning ordinances is each time we change a category, as we did for the R5 and all that, we should have the accompanying ordinance available for public reference. We should include it, or should include it as an attachment packet to the UDC.
Okay, now you're talking about updating the UDC code with an ordinance, right?
Right, are you talking, okay,
Okay, I'm just talking about ordinances in general that we need to talk about.
okay.
Do we want to take on, since we're done with the zoning map, and it's up to the city council whether they're going to pass that or not. But we said that after that we would discuss ordinances. Like, for instance, ordinances, however you all want, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Do you want to talk about the ordinances as they, R5 has not been passed yet. I mean, that's the holdup on all this. But assuming it is passed, do we want to take the sign ordinance, which is a major issue in this city, and the ordinance for the buildings and what's allowed and what it should look like along 281? That could be a 281 ordinance, an ordinance that stipulates what we will allow on Highway 281 that will comply with the R5 zone.
Madam Chairman, could I comment on your discussion while you're discussing?
Yes, come right in, Connie.
Thank you. This is Connie Barron, council, and I don't think I see any other council members here. So I want to make sure I don't see any. If there are any others logged on, please identify, because I can't address you if there's a quorum, but I don't believe that there is. I don't see anybody else on. So if that's clear, I wanted to say, I would love to see planning and zoning take this on. In fact, I'm asking, please, can't speak on behalf of the council, but I will say that the council had voted on 2 different issues. One is to begin to explore a 281 corridor overlay, because we do believe that the pressure for development is likely to come first and foremost along the 281 corridor. And that's what will set the tone for our community. What the buildings are going to look like, what the building standards, design standards, the ordinances that will regulate that is hugely important and really needs to be evaluated and updated and brought to our attention so we can update and pass those. We are sorely lacking in research capabilities now, and while we had hoped to perhaps bring on a firm that could provide a lot of that labor and time, our budget situation right now is such that we just aren't sure that's going to happen, or if so, when it does. And you guys have so much expertise already. It would be immensely helpful. The second part of that, the council also passed or approved our movement toward applying to become a scenic city under Scenic Texas. And the primary reason for that was to bring to the table additional resources to help evaluate, reevaluate, and update our ordinances. They have staff, they have hundreds of model ordinances that can be researched and accessed. And I'm happy to say that in a call for volunteers, there were quite a few citizens who stepped forward and said, we will help with the legwork, with some guidance. You tell us where to go, we'll research them, we'll read them, we'll bring them back to a larger group for consideration. And also the Scenic Texas application process is divided into pockets, which just kind of breaks those sections down a little more easily. And so while you may be looking, and our priority for the labor available, I hope, will be along that 281 corridor, creating an overlay district if necessary for those ordinances that may look different than other places, and that's perfectly allowable under local government code to do that. But we also then, I hope, and we'll share my contacts and information if you're willing to take this on. And if you guys can sort of drive the train, gather together those other pieces and let some of our other citizens who have areas of interest help dig into those ordinances, because we're going to have to get to all of them eventually. So if we can run some parallel work and investigation with folks moving toward using Scenic Texas as a guide, that's great. So what I'm asking is, if you guys are going to explore ordinances, one, I hope you will do that. Two, I hope you will set the 281 corridor as a priority to delve into them with your expertise, but also kind of take the position of, if we're going to dig into this, let's see how many people we can gather around the table and give some assignments and carve it out and help us move the process along. One of the Scenic Texas categories is signage. Signage is a big deal to have an attractive town, how those signs look. So it's sitting out there anyway and needs to be done. And I'm just offering to give you as many contacts and as many volunteers as I can help round up, if you guys are willing to lend your expertise and leadership to the process.
Thank you, Connie. Commissioners?
Connie, this is outside of the historic district, correct? It's 281 outside of the historic district?
Yes, because right now, I think for two reasons. One, the historic district has its own thing going on through the streetscape, that there's focusing primarily on the town square and the historic district. They already have some additional protections in our little historic square that we don't have once you get out of this historic district. We don't have that continuity of feel and character that we'd like to take out through new ordinances. So while the Scenic Texas does have a section for streetscape and for historical preservation as an added thing, I think certainly those folks could be and would want to be at the table sort of working on their thing at the same time. Again, I don't see it as a conflict or a duplication at all, but coordination is probably what's needed among the different groups working on it, with you guys taking the lead a lot for the 281 corridor overlay, and especially the signage, which are two big categories that are urgent need.
Before it's ever approved, that has to come before us.
I just wanted to clarify that it's outside of the historic district.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
And so what we're talking about is what we've talked about before. And Connie has offered to help us and give us some additional people that will help us. Because this is a big job. It's kind of like when we started the zoning map. I mean, we didn't realize what a big job that was going to, I think RK did, but I was dumb and stupid. And I'm just like, yeah, we can do that. You know, kind of. This is a big job. And when it entails us doing an ordinance, then we have to also look at the comprehensive master plan, and we have to make sure that we update the UDC code or it complies with the UDC code. And when we're looking at 281, we've already talked about as a group that we don't want it, like right now, you drive down 281, you're driving down Sign Alley. There's signs everywhere, all different kinds and sizes and shapes, and that's all you see when you walk down, when you drive down. So we're going to have to bring all that in. So it's not going to be as easy, but somebody has to go out and look at various designs that fit this town, because the aesthetics, as Brad told us when he was here, make a big difference on what will allow or not allow in the city of Blanco along 281. And so if we don't want a huge box store 2 blocks down on 281, we have to make sure that our ordinances support small, commercial, and residential, which is what we're asking for in R5.
You know, this is going to include, this is going to get into design review.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering who is going to be doing it. Because design review is, you know, something that I've been through it before, and it's not, to me, it's another category along with zoning, planning, zoning, design review, all the
Land development signs, blah, blah, blah.
code enforcement. You know, I was just looking at through some of my material, and I've got a section on design enforcement. Code enforcement. And I'm thinking, who does code enforcement in our city?
Well, we don't have one now, but I think that, we don't have one now. And that's the point then, I think city council is working on that. But at this point, from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Connie, but Kelly has taken that on, that job on, in addition to what else she does.
Yes, Kelly's doing some code enforcement, and our police department is assisting as well. And what we're having to do right now is we don't have personnel to do proactive code enforcement, as in driving around and looking and being knowledgeable and pointing these things out. So we're having to create a better form, a more usable form, something online, have a citizen education program to say, if you see something that you are concerned about, that you think that sign doesn't belong there, there's a new feather banner all over the place, there's somebody clearing land, there's somebody with a big construction truck in front of a building, any chance there's a permit in there or what have you, where people are worried about violations or noticing things they're wondering about, they can turn the form into the city. We can then research it or send someone out. Either Kelly will look at it, or we ask the chief to take a look at it and see if an officer needs to go out and make contact. It is my hope, and again, this is unofficial, but it is my hope that we will be able to do with code enforcement in the very near future until we get our budget figured out, which may be a few months down the line. I don't want to wait that long. I'm hoping we will be able to get a code enforcement officer, at least initially on a contract basis. So we can take in forms that say, we think this is wrong, somebody spotted this, and then we can have a code enforcement on a contract basis, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, depending upon the workload, to come in and work those complaints, investigate them and take action as needed, until we can find out if we have the money to hire a full-time code enforcement officer, which would be our hope. But again, what we've said before is we just don't have confidence in our budget numbers right now. And to hire someone is a disservice to that person, to hire them and then find out 2 or 3 months as our numbers shake out that we didn't have the money we thought we had, and we have to let them go. We'd rather hold off on hiring, work with some contract labor, try to make do on an as-needed basis, and then know that code enforcement is a concern and it is a priority of ours. We're just going to have to figure out how we can afford to get it done in the best way we can get it done.
Do you have anybody in the public works section that could become a code enforcement person?
Well, right now I would say, and I'm not sure how much we can talk about agenda-wise, but right now Public Works says they have no additional time to
Okay.
work toward these things. We're still assessing workload and what can or cannot be done on some of these. What we're trying to say is, if there's a city employee out there on the street anyway, and there's something on an address and they're going to be out there doing whatever, they could knock on the door and say, excuse me, but this has been brought to our attention and it's a violation of the ordinance. I need you to clean it up, take it down, move it over, do whatever it is that they need to do, and then be able to make a note to the office that that initial contact's been made, and we can start the clock ticking for action being taken on it. So we're trying to really pull together as best we can, working with citizens, our staff that's out on the street as much as they are, whether it's officers. But I just think we will be hard pressed for a while to do proactive code enforcement. We're going to have to do reactive, where folks can bring to our attention violations that they suspect, things they suspect are a violation, and we can hopefully start working on those at least to keep them from getting worse.
Okay, so council, commission, do you have more?
Well,
Let's talk about it.
I deliver meals, so I see a lot of code enforcement.
Code violations.
Code violations, just everywhere. And I know in the past we've had code enforcement and it's been pretty strong. So strong, I think that's why the person was let go. And this has been several years ago. So I know it's a problem. And I know that, what you're saying, Donnie, is that we just don't have the capability right now.
Not right now, but it's on our.
Chris?
I'm probably out of my league here, but
Yeah.
I know I do.
Okay.
Mine's up. I'm probably way out of my league here, but can some of this, if it crosses over into a health issue, be handled by the county health department?
I can't answer that. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know, but the county's not going to walk our streets and look at our city and say, other than maybe the health department, they're not going to say that sign shouldn't be there. Now, I know that they're going to look at that sign down there on Chandler Street. I know that we still have a lot of problems. I can say to you, when I drive down 281, I'm ashamed of what I look at on those signs. They're every color, size, everything's on them. There is no reason why that sign has to be. We didn't let Tractor Supply do that. We clamped down on them like a dirty shirt. But we let people all along 281 put a sign up that is unnecessary. How are they going to see their properties? They can put that sign. If you go through a really stringent city that has good code enforcement, they have those signs smaller and up by their houses or up by their buildings. They don't have to be out there where you can't see anything but a sign. Drive down 281. I mean, it's not just me. Have you looked at it?
Susan, I was referring to things like mattresses being dumped along the side of the road,
Along the side of the road.
that type of thing.
We have roads that are private roads. The UDC code says that if you have a private road, you have to keep it up, just like you would, a city would keep a road up. But they're not kept up because you can drive on, is it 12th Street? It doesn't even have a through street. You go over here on Blanco Avenue, right behind the State Bank, the Security State Bank, and that road has, like you said, it has mattresses and trash. That's right across the street from the JP office. And they've been there for months. And you drive down there and then you make that left turn or whatever name that street is, and you gotta have a tractor that maybe you can get through there. I mean, we have issues in this town that you could be a blind person and see it. When you drive down that road and you can't get your car through, there's a problem.
I was also thinking, and I think this was brought to attention by one of the other councilors here, commissioners here, about ambulance responses and such. And since that's handled by the county, I didn't know if that's a way to draw the county assistance in.
I mean, you can bring the county in here if you want to. They're not going to do the things that's going to keep this town clean and safe and something that we want visitors to come and see. They can help all they want.
Right, but I wasn't sure if it was outside the authority of the town to do some of those things, and I thought we might also take advantage of any help we could get. Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Hey, Susan, can I say something?
Yes.
So the one thing I wanted to touch base on is I think we all agree that this is important for it to be the next thing that we really focus on. I think the consequences for somebody not following it is kind of irrelevant because that's something the city is working on and they're going to do their best to take care of that. But I think we still have to start and work on our part before anything else matters. So I just think we should, focus on what we can do and then let the city do what they can do.
I agree, Brandon. I think you're right on track. We don't want to not look at these ordinances and not try to update them, really because we think that we don't have an officer active right now. We have to look at them with the knowledge that the city council will try to get an officer in here and everybody can do their part. The commission can do their part. The city council can do their part. Those people can go out there too. Now, I will tell you, and my husband always hates it when I bring his name up and refer to him at home, and he tells me don't do that. But when I was telling him about maybe having the citizens looking at these code enforcement issues, and he said, if you were born and raised in Blanco, you're not going to tattle on your people across the street or down the road or across town. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, people are not going to come forward unless it is a health hazard. And then they'll be resistant. I mean, that's all I can say to you. We've got to do something besides the citizens. The city council can do it. The commission can do it. The historical commission can do it. Those folks that are on commissions and committees that are assigned to do those things, they will do that. But you try to get just the citizens, they won't even come and speak at the city council meetings or the planning and zoning meetings. Why would they tell on their neighbor?
I think the key there is it has to be anonymous. It has to be anonymous. And if it's anonymous, trust me, people will tell. They tell me all the time. And so, but they're not going to fill out their name and address and feel that the code enforcement officer or somebody's going to go knock on the door and say, Joe Smith over here across the street filed this complaint on you. A violation's a violation. If you see something, you're looking at what's happening regardless of who lives there, and we should look at the property in the violation and not who filled out the form. I see no need in identifying a citizen who points out something that is aesthetically displeasing, unhealthy, or whatever, with the question of, do we really allow this in the city? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. They don't have to know the code, but I think they should be able to comfortably raise that issue and know their identity is protected. And I think if we do that, you'll be amazed at how quickly somebody will tell us about something they're seeing.
And that's good.
But it has to be anonymity. There has to be.
Yeah, I hope that happens. But we still have to do our ordinances. I mean, that's the
Yes.
basic here.
Yes,
And so
please.
let's-
So earlier, Laura said something about the design standards, et cetera. And again, I will share, if you decide to take this on, I have had someone offer to focus on design standards as kind of taking the lead on that little section to help with research. I've had somebody offer to take the lead on trails and parks and that sort of thing, and looking at, and some of these things again are not as important as the ordinances for development that are key, but they follow right along. And if we're digging into this and kind of working up, why not share what we're learning and finding? And if you come across something, you know, there's somebody over here who's working on that, you can shoot it over to them and help them out with it. There's one on utilities. I doubt we're going to get to that. That's going to be pretty expensive, but it'll be good to identify, and maybe something 2 years down the line, or for future building, we may want future building in certain areas to deal with. Are we going to be seeing utility lines up, or if they're in certain areas, or should they be buried? I can't answer that. I'm just saying it's a section that's there. Our night sky, we've got a point person for night sky. The chamber, Libby Ailey at the chamber said the chamber absolutely positively wants to participate in this. We think it's a key factor for economic development. And I think the chamber committee would be a wonderful group to pull together to work with a leader from planning and zoning to dig into the sign ordinances, because it's very often their members who want to do these signs that really are going to hurt business in the long run. And if they can understand that, I think that may be. So we have a lot of, I do believe there's a lot of help out there, a lot of eyes and research, but they're going to need guidance, education, and coordination. And if that's where planning and zoning would be imperative to take that role. You are the most knowledgeable body in this. I learn from you every time I sit in on a meeting, and I think we can build a team of people who can really dig in and prioritize what we're doing, but get a lot of things done that we right now just don't have the money, resources, consulting fees, staff in City Hall to take on. But I feel very pressured that we've got to move on this, because when those proposals start coming in to build something, we need to have in place the way we want that to be built. And some of those guidelines may be good that we have right now, in which case great, and some of them may not be. And we need to get them updated and adopted as quickly as we can.
Okay, so go ahead.
No, I agree. You agree?
You brought in the night skies. I wanted to also bring up lighting. I have a problem with the security lights, with the overhead lights, with the street lights. I know it is. That's what I'm saying. I think that's one of the issues we need to look at again.
So we have to have the same as we have in the zoning. We have to have a starting place. We have to have a basis to start from. And I'm thinking that we should start looking in the UDC code, because that's available to all of us. And maybe we just start, because we're a little fluctuating here, we can either start, for instance, in policy-related applications, which is zoning, mapping, special use permit, historical districts would be to concerned with. So we could take one of these issues, we could all look at it, bring it forward at the next meeting, and go through that. And then if Connie has anything, or anyone out there that we can look at, we can do that. Start here and then go back to whatever ordinance supports that, because that's we're going to have to do. Now, we don't have to start there. We could look at the subdivision related applications. We could look at development related applications, which is zoning verification, demolition criteria, which was a major issue. What are we going to tear down? What are we going to leave there when it looks really bad? building permit, certificate of occupancy. So that's in your development-related applications in section 3.7. We just need to decide tonight, I think, do we want one person to take a section and then we'll bring it together, or do we all want to work on the same section? I mean, I'm open. I don't know how best to do that.
Well, I'm thinking, if you want a starting point, why don't we look at issues that we have dealt with? And you brought up Cross Street. A good example, they've had housing built on Cross Street now, and they're looking, I think they look good. The street hasn't been put to. Now, was that, and I remember we talked about this with Will, about whether it's going to be a city street, was the city going to get involved with it to put that street through? Were the developers going to do that? I don't remember.
I did. I went on and looked at that. The developers were going to put that street in. They have 2 years to do it.
Okay.
And we did that in June of 2020. So we have to wait until, and in fact, I have a note at home to make a call to that developer and find out, because I don't know if city council has even talked to them. I don't know who's talking. Since Will left, I don't know who is talking to them. But I can certainly call and get an update on where they stand. I do understand that because of the COVID, lack of employees and lack of being able to work and the tremendous cost in lumber, those things slowed that development down quite a bit. And I can understand that because he's a businessman, just like any other businessman. On the other hand, he's got 2 years and he has to come back, which we're going to talk about in here. In one place in the UDC code, it says 1 year, and the other place it says 2 years. And when we talk about the UDC code in a minute, we're going to have to make that together, whatever that is. But nevertheless, all I'm saying is I want to put a call into him because I'd like to find out what he says, when it's going to happen. I don't know if anybody's contacted him at all. And I don't think it's fair we make any kind of decision until we have a conversation with him.
Thank
That's
you.
where I stand. What do you think?
Makes sense.
Okay, but I agree with Lois. The roads, that road is terrible on 12th Street because it's been that way for 15 years. And the problem is the lady that lives, one of the problems is the lady that has a residence on that, she's at the end of that street, but and so it can't go through any further. So she's on a dead end street, so nobody comes through there. So she's like out in her own little place. So she's not going to push having that street fixed. But the new houses that came up closer to Mesquite Street, they want garbage service and they want ambulance service. And so they're pushing for that to be happen. Hopefully they have gone to city council because we can't make them build a road. That's a city council thing. I get things on my email and I say, you need to notify city council and I'll send them an email, but it's a city council problem. So it's not, we can't fix it, but we can address it. And so that's what I would like to do. So I don't know where y'all want to start. That's what this conversation is about. Where do y'all want to? And Brandon, you're out there. You can chip in anytime.
Well, I will say, I think 2 things. One, when we do this, we should probably have everybody focus on one at a time. That way we can get as much brilliant influence to get it right versus having each person working on separate ones. That just doesn't make so much sense to me. But the other piece to it is I think we should start with kind of the biggest fear factor. And at least for me, it's development and construction coming in over the next year or 2 before we have a chance to get this stuff in place that gets built before we can actually help decide how we want it to look. And so I think if we can start with our biggest fear and try to put those ordinances first and then kind of span out that way, that makes the most sense on my end.
Okay, now you do know that those ordinances that we're going to try to put into place, when you say you want to do that so that we don't have fear of a group of property moving in that we don't want, it's going to come down to the same thing that we just talked about. It's going to come down to aesthetics. It's going to come down to setbacks. It's going to come down to how it looks. It's going to come down to what property is next to it. I mean, all those things are combined and they all have rules and regulations in the UDC code. And we have to go back and look at the comprehensive master plan. So I tend to agree with you that we all need to work on the same thing and go from one statement to the next statement. And Brendan, I really appreciate you bringing that point up but we have to remember that an ordinance won't fix 281 with one thing in mind. I mean, it's going to be a lot of things, land use, what it looks like, signage, height, building setbacks. I mean, all those things, what the front of it's supposed to look like, all those things. So if we begin to work on it, we can all come back and next month we can begin to lay this out, put it on a grid so that we know that we still have to work on these other things. I think it's a good idea of what you're saying though, that we do whatever we need to do first on 281. Do you agree with that, Brendan? And what do y'all think?
Yeah, I think creative ones are important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And maybe it makes sense for us to, sorry, I'm hearing some echo there and it's throwing me off. Maybe it makes sense for us to kind of think about it from a stance of what does each one of us kind of view might be coming this way, and what is our hesitation on that being okay, and then how do we put ordinances in place that focus on those things, like you said, setback, the look of the front, what the cover looks like, what the signage looks like. I get that it's a huge.
Right, how tall, how wide, right, what the windows look like, what the front looks like. I mean, we can put ordinances in that says they have to be compatible with the other properties around them. And we have to be careful when we say that, because we still have to say, if they're next to a new property, we don't want that property coming in. So we can start there, I agree, and we'll all bring our ideas back. And I think there's 7 of us that we can then begin, that's will be our starting place.
And again, remember, Scenic Texas offers lots of model ordinances that deal with all of those things, because they are all about how does it look, how inviting is it, does it maintain the character and charm of your town. Some of the ordinances that they have, you know, they may have over 500 available in a certain section, but it's going to depend on looking through them. Some of them are going to be from Austin, San Antonio. You don't want those. Some of them are going to be from, you know, a Bandera sized town or something smaller where it might make sense to at least look at those and go, would that make sense here? It would. That looks great. Let's use those setbacks and that size building and those things. That looks like Blanco. That feels like Blanco. So I think, again, it's labor intensive to wade through, but there are lots of resources there. And even the staff with Scenic Texas, who's worked with these different communities all around the state, are available, and they may well be able to say, you know, I think for Blanco, you guys ought to start looking at the ordinances for so-and-so, or for this town, or for that town. So as we look at, and then using y'all's proposed zoning map, which I feel sure we're going to get there as soon as we can, the R5, what would an R5 look like? If R5 is what's going to be along 281, then what are the specifics for building in an R5? And again,
that's where we'll have to start, because we're going to assume, folks, we're going to assume that the zoning map passed. If it doesn't, this city's in a world of hurt. I mean, anybody can build anything they want in an R zone as long as it's a building. They can go from 1 to 6. Nobody can say anything about it. So we have a lot of things that we have to do there. And if the R5 zone doesn't pass, somebody has to go back and revert to the 2014 map or reinstate the MX zone or whatever. I don't know what you do. I don't know. But anyway, those are things that we have to look at. And so shall we start with next month when we come back as a commission? We have looked at 281, and let's get a consensus on these are the things that are a problem. These are the things that we need to look at. I know that Chris is very interested in the landscaping. And so maybe that's what you look at, because that's what you go into. And what I'm looking at is signs. I don't like those signs out there. And Trey may have a different thing, but they all have to do with what we're looking at on 281. And then let's come back and zero in, just like we did on the map, on how we need to proceed forward. We can always talk to Connie. We can always look at those ordinances, but let's first find out what we have in here, what we don't like about it, and what we think that we need to look at to change. Does anybody agree with that, or everybody? Yes.
I want to know, Connie, when can we look at these documents that you're referencing with the scenic city? I mean,
They are all online. They are
So-
all online. So if you look at Scenic Texas application process, I had it all printed off. So it's a big, because I can't think any other way, but they are all that information is online under the application process. And so you can link to category, and then under the category, it takes you to different ordinances that you can reference, and it'll tell you what town those ordinances are in, so you can read them all. So everything is online under Scenic Texas under their application process.
Does it,
And I'll
does it also,
share my printed copy with you, and then if you want to get a copy, I'll make one for you.
thank you. Does it address the state requirements, such as there are certain construction things that the city is not allowed to demand of a developer outside of the historic district? If that's my understanding. Does it address that?
I
know?
would imagine that it would, but I can't answer that for sure. You have to ask the Scenic Texas staff person, and they're available and they're very responsive. So again, I'll share you names and phone numbers and
If you
and
can email
whatever.
the names and phone numbers and the internet address, I will put it out to the commissioner so that they'll have all that just at hand, get their hands.
Great, I will gladly do that.
Okay, thank you. So does everybody agree with that? And Trey, you should be jumping up and down. You don't have to do the math every day. I know that was such a major thing on you, but you will have to be when the city council takes on the map. If they have any changes, we haven't talked about, if they have any changes that they want made, minor changes like maybe what we see on Google doesn't have the right property or something, then they will send those back to us, then we'll change those, and then we'll send them back to them. But we have to remember, we must remember that we zoned as an area. We did not zone for property. We didn't say this property is going to be this zoning and this, we had to zone by area or it's illegal. So we zoned by area. We said this section will be R1 or R2, or this section will be R5. So we didn't take property by property, and therefore if the city council sees something that they need to correct on the map, they can correct the map and we can correct it for them. But we just have to remember that the properties didn't really mean that much to us, each property.
And I think that's something where I'm concerned about, and something that I think that I would want to do along 281 is to look at those structures that need to come down. We got a bunch of stuff that been sitting there. You know, we had that trailer that came in and they were given a certain amount of time.
Majestic Hills?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's gone,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but, you know, it's sitting there vacant, and we have some other structures that are right in that general area that.
So maybe that's the part that you will take on. I mean, she's taking on, she'll probably look at landscaping, I'm gonna look at size, I don't know what these guys think. If that's your part, if your part is demolition, then that's what we look at. By all of us putting in what we have in mind, that is on our heart and mind, then we'll all come together and be able to make all those ordinances work together.
I don't know if y'all noticed, but you know, there's been quite a bit of demolition going on 13th and 281. And they've redone the throw and eye thing, if you know, they put a canopy on it, they painted it red.
And I don't know if they got, you know what? Where if they got a permit? How would we know? We never know, by the way. Nothing is on the internet or nothing is on the homepage where we can go in and see as a commission what permits have been put out there. So we have no way of knowing if these properties that we're looking at are permanent.
Well, if they have a permit, they usually need to display that.
Well, yeah, if you want to get out and walk over there, it may be on the side or it may be back. And I mean, all I'm saying is that I just think there's going to be a problem, although I've already sent a couple of things to the council to the city administration on things that I've seen. But you know what? Those are pretty much things in my area, you know? I mean, when I drive over on the other side of town, like what Lori's saying, you don't go over there. Maybe I should, but I don't go over there every day. You and I have driven around.
That's our
On
thing.
Saturday afternoon.
Actually, that brings it back to the county. We had discussed the definition of demolition and abandonment a while back, and we made some edits which were approved to the UDC. But there again, when I had done some of the research, a lot of it bounced back to being a health and safety issue. And that was the reason you could get something demolished, which bounces into the county, right? Because we don't have a health and safety person, if my understanding is correct. So that's what I'm saying. At some point, we might have a crossover, and we just have to be aware of that.
When we come up with these ordinances, we can research that. We can call the county, we can call the Texas, we can call the state. I mean, we have lots of resources to be able to say, is this ordinance going to be able to stand? First, we have to say what the ordinance is. First, we have to say what the problem is. If we don't define a problem, we can't call and ask anybody about it. So yes, we'll call and ask. I'm sure you're going to be one to call because you're the one that does that. Let me just call this person and find out. So,
Yeah.
Okay, folks, anything else, Brandon? Did you?
No,
need
ma'am.
it?
That sounds like a good place to be starting.
Okay, so we're going to look at that. Everybody bring your notes and your views and what you've looked up, and we'll start next week. Next month, that will start our foundation. Okay, so now let's go to new business, and the new business that we have this week is let's consider and discuss and take possible action on annual UDC updates. And so I asked you guys last meeting to bring anything that you felt like was going to be an issue that you wanted to discuss to update the UDC code.
Are we now just specifically talking about chapter 4 of the UDC or all of UDC?
Anything you want to talk about other than historical, we'll talk about.
I mean, obviously, in my opinion, chapter 4 needs to be updated if and when the new zoning map gets approved. So, we need to get rid of some of the old terminology and introduce the new terminology in the UDC.
Do you have anything in mind?
Well, on page 2, for example, there says it's new undeveloped territory hereinafter annexed involuntarily to the city shall have the agricultural zoning district.
What page are you on?
Page 2 of chapter 4 of the UDC.
Page 2?
Yeah. Well, it's actually page 100 of the UDC.
Which one do you have? Do you have the November 20th, 2020?
Yes.
Or the 9th or the 7th?
November 10, 2020. That's the one that's on the city website.
Okay, and what page is it?
It says page 100 of 317.
Page 100 is in chapter 3 applications and you're looking at.
I'm chapter 4. I'm in chapter 4.
Okay. And what section is it?
It's
Zoning map?
section 4.2 E,
42E.
and then small I.
C, maybe, the newly annexed territory, is that what you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about?
where it says do the annex involuntarily. I thought, for
Okay,
example,
okay,
involuntary annexation no longer is possible.
that's right.
So that's something that would need to be changed,
Good catch.
right? And I've gone through the first 30 pages. It's very laborious reading.
Tell us about it.
There's a whole bunch of things that are not, and I can send it to you by email. It
Okay,
would
so
go
now-
beyond now the, discussing each individual item.
Yes, we do, because we have to get it written up, and then we'll bring it before us the public hearing.
Yeah.
When we do that. Now, when you're looking at E, it says newly annexed territory shall be added to the official zoning map and zoned as follows. You can have a newly annexed territory, but it has to be voluntary.
Yes.
So what do you want to change?
Well, I'm just saying, because here in the code, it still says newly annexed, involuntary annexed.
Does it say involuntary?
In my version, it says.
Let me see what you have.
See, that's it.
That highlighted yellow portion.
You got the,
Ah,
yeah, I've still got the old one here, yeah.
And I downloaded that from the city
Yeah,
website.
that's right. You got the right one. I'm sorry, just text me while I catch up with you. So an III under newly undeveloped territory, hereinafter annexed. And if you scratch involuntarily, right?
Yeah, but those are changes that are
We're
necessary.
gonna do that now. That's what we're doing. That's what we're gonna do tonight. We're gonna write these down. We're gonna have them all, I'm gonna have them all printed out. We're gonna look at them next thing at a public hearing. That's why we're here tonight.
How long do you want to be here
Now, the
tonight?
long it takes, is what we did before.
I do not have unlimited time tonight.
We had established a template to use last time that worked with the city secretary's computer system. We should probably redistribute that so that any edits we want to make, we will already have in a format that can be cut and pasted once it's finalized, as opposed to having different texts and font sizes and everything else. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does that mean you're going to send that to each person?
I'm going to send it to you and you're going to send it to each person.
All right. So,
And then I'll be more than happy to go through my notes and put them in the format that is
okay, and
required.
so when you do that, be sure to put your changes in red.
Okay,
So you can have, in III, whatever you have in there, if you're gonna change something, make sure it's red so that we can quickly go back to it and we don't have to read the whole section. We only know
Yeah.
what's gonna be
Yeah.
changed.
I mean, that's what I've done already. I've just used yellow, not red, but I can
Okay, and
change
that's-
easily
but-
the color. It's-
But you're not going to have to redo the whole thing, right? I mean, you highlight, I can look at that, you highlighted the whole line back there.
Yeah.
And you really only needed to take out involuntary.
Yeah,
And
well,
next to the
it
city
is.
shall have the agriculture. So all you have to do is change that one word. When we change the code, if we can, like we did before, we
Okay.
only changed actually what we wanted to change. If there was anything in there that was okay, we left that. We didn't
Yeah.
change it. We didn't rewrite this whole thing. We just changed what was
Yeah.
incorrect.
I mean, if Chris can pass on the formatting guidelines, then I'll be more than happy to go through it for the next time. Have my comments in the format that is easily.
That's what we ended up doing last year, because we reviewed a lot of it. Obviously, we missed this
Yeah.
one word, but as you know, we went through a lot of it, page
Yeah.
by page, and made a lot of edits, and then they went to the city secretary, and then she reviewed them, and then,
Okay. Now, let's go
That's the
through.
process.
Can you just give us an idea of what if you talk about it now, and I make a note, Mark, put an X on that, I know that we're gonna have that for discussion. Because they have to have this in a public hearing. So I don't even remember how we did that. I think you did it last time. We gave you all that stuff and you typed it
I did,
up. So why am I getting
because you offered.
it? Okay,
Yeah.
so what else do you have?
Well, since we're not on page 102,
Tell me what's the heading?
it's a big table that goes over several
102?
pages that goes through the different zoning
Okay. gotcha.
classifications.
Yes,
And there's, for example, a zoning classification MH for manufactured housing. The new zoning map no longer has manufactured housing.
yeah, it isn't that the zoning doesn't have it, it's that the zoning, we did not designate an area in the zoning for manufactured housing. So
Okay,
if I looked at, tell me again where that is, so I can look
it's
at
on
it.
page 102.
Somebody else help me out here.
See, I can't help this because I don't have the current.
I don't either, I
What
had the
is- what does it say
2019
at
one.
the top? You're in a different, you're in chapter, a different chapter? What
I
chapter?
just read I started reading chapter 4 because I thought that was the one that pertained to planning and zoning.
But I think that
And it is a table 4.1, zoning districts established.
is that 142 maybe, did you say? Am I missing you? Huh? Why is mine not saying 102?
I mean, you're looking at the same thing that I've looked at.
Is this what he's looking at?
We've got an extra 30 some odd pages.
Yeah, but this is the 11, 10, 20 that the city council printed for me.
Page 98 on it.
Hmm.
Page
So
98.
just tell me what section it is and I can find it. Doesn't
Well,
matter.
it's table, as I said,
Okay, I got that.
it's table
Table
4.1,
got it? Okay.
zoning districts established.
Yes, got it.
And after manufactured housing, it
Yes.
goes into our existing. That would not be any longer a zoning designation, right?
And it says, as of the date of 2019 UDC update, this is no longer considered an active zoning district
And why is it still in here?
because there's R all over the map. And it's telling people that if if you're in an existing R zone, your
Okay.
zoning doesn't change until the property changes.
Changes hands, okay, all right, good. Then at the end of the table goes on for mixed use development.
And read that section. MX is existing but no longer active, see R5.
Okay, then I need to redo my reading more carefully.
You're good,
Yeah.
Hans. I mean, this is tough stuff. But what about that other one, that last one that you have right there? What is it? Which one are you looking at?
Well, park, there's also, see, I was comparing also with this year. Here we have no park designation in the
Right.
legend.
Right?
But here we are talking about park designation
But
in the
R,
UDC.
right, because right now, what R is, and I think, let me look for R again.
Well, it's
I think
PR,
it says-
Oh, park.
Oh, PR, park.
park district.
Okay, so,
Same thing. It doesn't have anything on the map, but it still is a legitimate.
So,
Right.
okay, all right, okay. Then, as I said, then I need to reread, with a different,
well, go ahead. I mean, how many more do you have?
a bunch.
Well,
So, but
do y'all
as I
just go
said,
through this?
let
or not?
let me reread. It's not a good use of all of our, to go through all of my mistakes.
We're gonna have to
So I'd
go
rather-
through it before we can have a public hearing on it.
Yeah,
We all
so-
have to go through it.
So, but let me first do my homework properly.
Okay.
That way
Do your
it saves everybody
Good.
time.
All right, I would like for y'all to, before we come together at the next meeting, if you will send me your edits, I'll make sure, if y'all will send them to me, remember, you can only send them to me, can't send them to everybody. I will put them all on a spreadsheet so that when we look at them at the next meeting, we'll have them in some order. Is that agreeable?
Yep.
Okay. Because they have to get them, two, three people might be looking at the same thing. What did I just take on? Okay, so the update and the correction, so what this means is that I had some here, I made a list, and this is what I would like to see. Just, this is really all we need, is for everybody to put what page and what we're going to do,
Yeah.
and then we'll all look at this together, and then we can send it to city council, and they're the ones that's gonna have to insert it in here anyway. We don't need to go through this insert and do it. Okay, for
But
instance.
then it's important also that we all look at the same document, because if we don't, then this becomes a nightmare.
Or for the last
What?
10 years of UDC.
Well, this is, for some reason, this is what the city council gave.
Mhm.
And all I'm saying is, if you tell me what chapter.
Yeah.
And what section, it
So,
doesn't matter what your
okay.
page number is,
Okay,
but I
yeah,
have to have chapter and section.
that's fine. yeah.
So, for instance, I put on here that in the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2C, we need to replace the sentence, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall choose its own vice chair. we need that to read, the chair, vice chair, and secretary shall be elected by and from the members of the commission. It's in the ordinance, it's just not in the UDC code.
Okay.
Chapter 4 in zoning districts and use, on table 4.1, the zoning districts established, replace high density dash transition R5 to read residential transition zone. And the purpose in that section would be the residential transition R5 incorporates of whatever else it has to say. So what we've done is we've taken out the high density, which is what we talked about before. The mobile food vendors, section 4.5, 9. The expiration, extension, and termination. The expiration, extension, and termination of a SUP shall be governed by the following rules. And I'm saying B, replace that script with SUPs for existing uses and or structures should be renewed for each successive 2-year periods by the administration or mayor if either of the following I or II do not apply. What it says right now is that they automatically renew. I don't think anything in this city should automatically renew, especially when you have an SUV. When you've given them a special permit, why would you want to just let it renew? And that's what we've done. It should come before somebody, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Should it not?
Mhm.
And section 4.0, plan development district, the master plan. I would like to replace the script to be the same as in section 5.9, site development permit, plan duration. In there, which is the oldest one, because it's been there for quite some time, it says 2 years. And yet it says in the master plan, approval of a PD master plan is for 1 year. They both should be the same. They're the same thing. They're both site development. So let's make them as the one that was there before. It's more lenient for the developer, but for instance, if you're going to have a development, it's pretty, I mean, it took us a year to build one house. So I don't know that we're asking a realistic time to say that you have 1 year. They have to have 2 years or that goes away. That permit goes away. That's basically what the UDC code says. I would just like for it to read the same as what has been there the longest. And the last thing I had on my list was the subdivision land development. I want to correct the residential 4 minimum lot area. When it shows in UDC is 20,000 square feet to 2,000 square feet. It's not supposed to be 20,000 square feet. And in section 5, I wanted to discuss that with you. If y'all, I don't know if y'all have it with you, but if you looked at section 5.8 in the commercial buildings, I think on what you're with, mine's on page 205. It'll be fairly close to that. It's in non-residential design standards. Which is 5.8. And this is something we need to discuss. I don't know what to do with this. It says on there in number 5, it says commercial buildings, and then in parentheses, the administration put, does this include R5? So we need to read that section. And it is talking about in A, commercial uses may be contained in multi-story mixed-use structures with commercial retail uses on the ground level and apartment dwelling or offices on upper levels. And that works in R5, right?
Yeah, sure.
Commercial uses may only be integrated with dwelling units on the first floor if the dwelling is occupied by the owner or principal commercial tenant for the building. I don't know what that means. I've read that several times and I can't wrap my head around what that really means. But I don't know that it would not apply to R5. Do y'all?
Would you read that again? I'm not finding that paragraph? Start with,
In number 5,
right,
it's the I.
okay. The commercial uses may only be integrated. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, commercial uses may only be integrated with dwelling units on the first floor if the dwelling is occupied by the owner or principal commercial tenant for the building.
My understanding was those were intended for folks, so you couldn't have upstairs apartments that you rent unless the owner is living in them, and then they're allowed to have them on the first floor as well. That was my understanding. Otherwise, you have to have them separated.
What's the reason for that restriction?
Yeah,
Well, I don't know the reason. that's my understanding of why it had it that
I mean,
way.
that's
You
how
had to
I
have,
interpret what it says, but I mean, what's the reason for that restriction? You know, why
we
does
should
the
ask,
owner of the building have to live in the building in order for it to be on the first floor?
we would need to ask the prior planning and zoning and city council why they put that in there.
well, let's think about what that said. Says commercial uses might only be integrated with dwelling units on the first floor if the dwelling unit is occupied by the owner or principal commercial tenant for the building, meaning that you can't have, meaning, I guess what they're saying is, if you have a commercial, which on R5, it has to be light commercial. It can't just be full-blown commercial. And you have to either have the tenant or the manager, I guess, of that building living there, so that you couldn't have a commercial property on the bottom and a rental property on the top.
You could, but
This is saying you can't.
this,
Well, the way you read it. and the
I see
way
what you're
you said
saying,
It only means on the first floor, only dwelling can be if it is occupied by the owner of the business.
yes, that's right.
Otherwise, it has to be on the second or third.
That's how
floor.
I'm taking it too. Otherwise, all the apartments have to be on the second floor. And I remember,
Otherwise, it can only be light commercial on the first floor and dwelling units above.
I remember also they felt, my understanding was that it kind of matched the older style of people having the stores on the first floor and having basically rooms on the second floor, but we're doing apartments here. Isn't that more in keeping with the character of the town? I thought that's why maybe they were doing that.
Maybe, but.
It doesn't state
Can
that.
you pull off the R5, what that actually says?
Can you find
About the
It's,
unit, it talks about the residential combination with the. No, that's not you.
Okay, the high-density residential transition R5 incorporates the characteristics of the high-density residential R3 zone and is intended to serve as a transition or buffer zone between residential and non-residential zones, particularly commercial zones. In addition to residential uses, it provides for light commercial uses either in a mix with residential uses on the adjacent properties or in a mix on the same property.
Okay, so now it's saying a mix, which would be that you wouldn't be able to have in an R5 zone without a permit, commercial on the bottom and commercial on the top. So it would either have to be a commercial property, which is okay in an R5 zone, right? True?
Yeah.
I mean, that was what the thing was, wasn't it?
Yes. And I'm cool with the definition here, of R5 as it is right here. I just don't think that it makes sense to restrict the first floor usage as a dwelling unit only if it is occupied by the owner of the business.
Well, it's saying commercial rental uses on the ground floor.
Mhm.
And the property, the resident would be on the upper floor. That's what it's saying.
That's not the way I understood what you were reading.
It says mixed-use structures with commercial retail uses on the ground floor and apartment dwellings or offices on the upper levels.
Yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense.
Okay, so if that's the case, we agree with that position, right?
Yeah.
But then I is the one that I have a problem with. and Maybe that's what we're talking about. Commercial uses may only be integrated with the dwelling units on the first floor if the dwelling is occupied by owner or principal commercial tenant for the building. So I says that you can have the commercial unit, but it has to be, and it's integrated with the dwelling units if the dwelling is occupied by the owner or principal commercial tenant. I think we need to reword that. We need to look at that and make sure that that reads easier. I have a hard problem in some of this UDC stuff, and maybe if you study it for 30 minutes, you can kind of get the reasoning behind it, but it's difficult, and if you don't know what you're looking at, it's like the banners. If you don't know that you increase that 30 days to 3 months, you don't know that you've given them permission to hang the thing for the whole year. I mean,
Well, I'm thinking this would cover one of those categories where a home may have a room set aside for haircuts. You don't have to live upstairs in the house. You can have a room for haircuts and still live in the rest of the first floor in the building. That's how I would interpret that.
let's read that and bring it back. Let's
Okay.
do that. And then it says the building shall have a separate and direct entry into residential area. Now, we didn't ever say that, did we, in the R5 zone?
I don't think so. I haven't heard that.
Did we discuss it? Do we even address it?
No, and I think that maybe when it was an MX zone, that they were trying to separate commercial
Mhm.
and residential, and we're saying we can have a mix almost any way they want to put it in an R5 zone. As long as it reflects the characteristics of the properties next to it or across from it, and it's no more than 2 stories high. I mean, we've got some things in there that, that we know about, but I don't think you have to tell us separate entry, do you?
I mean, back under chapter 4, first floor residential use in a non-residential district is allowed as a secondary use. The residential use must either be a detached unit or an attached unit with rear access only.
It sounds like separate entrance.
Well, if you were gonna have a residence upstairs, you would want a separate entrance. You wouldn't have to walk through the commercial every time you wanted to go to your house, or your kids go to your house. So the back entry is one thing. And maybe that's what this is talking about. So what is that reference is where is that in chapter 4, you said?
Chapter 4.
So that makes sense, I mean, when you read it that way. So if that's the case, then 5, when it says, does this include R5, we have to say yes. So she would be able to put that on there, or not have the question mark, right? And because they're saying in order to maintain the integrated all-over character of the building facade, storefronts and other commercial facades on the first floor of a building shall be integrated designs with the upper floors, so that you couldn't have, which is a great thing. I mean, this is a good thing. I hope the ordinance supports this. That means that you can't make the bottom have like a grocery store front and have a residence at the top, and you get residents on both sides, right? In order to maintain an integrated all-over character of the building facade, the storefronts and other commercial facades on the first floors of the building shall be integrated with the same design as the upper floors.
Yeah.
So if it's a 2-story farmhouse, that's fine, but you couldn't have a brick storefront on the bottom and then a wood residence on the top.
Yeah, there has to be one uniform design for the whole
Right,
building.
and that's what that's saying, right? It's hard, but that's what that's saying. Do y'all agree with me?
I believe so.
Don't let me take this show on the road by myself.
You're doing just fine.
And then any large panes, display windows on the ground floor, retail service and restaurant uses shall not exceed 75% of the ground level facade. The large panes shall rest on a base of 18 inches at the ground level. Somebody's gonna have to look at that, because I'm sorry, when my husband starts talking about 18 feet and 18 inches, I'm like, show me. I can't see that. So you guys are gonna have to take that on. But I would like for you, everybody, to look at R5 that we're talking about, that number 5, and go through that section so that we can come back and say yes or no, that this does agree with the R5 zone, and if it doesn't, how do we make it agree? So what do we need to put in there? That's a good starting place right there. Well,
Okay.
that's all I had on my list. I really brought a big thing up there, didn't I? That last one. That was what's on my list, and we just need to research them a little more, bring it forward, put it on a sheet of paper. If you'll send it to me, I'll put it on a graph. I'll pull these code pages and make copies for you so that we're all looking at the same thing. We can mark them up and get them ready to go to Laurie to type in. You agree with that?
I think that's, Susan, what time frame are you looking at? Doing this at the next meeting or having a workshop in between, or what do you recommend? It seemed to me we had to have a couple of workshops last year, and I was trying to avoid that this year if we could.
We did a slew of those last year, a lot of workshops.
Last summer.
You don't remember the workshops. He wasn't here.
Yes, he was, but just not meant.
Yes, but not on.
Oh, no, on the zoning map, I'm saying, we had a slew of workshops that we had to produce to get them.
Yes.
So I'm open to a workshop, but it's difficult. I would first like for us to come back with this, with all of these, and then if we need a workshop to get it all together so that we can have a public hearing in the following meeting, then I'm all for that. I would just like to give us time to go through it and come back one meeting with some kind of organization before we start a workshop. I don't know that a workshop will help us until we kind of wrap our heads around what's going on.
At this time, do you know if Public Works or the Historic District has changes to the UDC they want to have reflected as well? Have you heard?
I have not heard one thing from the Historic Division.
Or
anybody
Public
else.
Works? Okay.
So
Because,
if you would contact them, that would be great.
okay,
Did I push that off? Did I get rid of that?
it's called delegating.
Is there anything else we need to discuss this evening? I had only on here the updated corrections on the UDC. We already talked about zoning. So this is two things that we'll talk about. And when we begin to update the UDC, it's going to take us right into our zoning package. And so we know that zoning is not going to happen in one meeting. That's going to be over into the fall. So zoning will happen overnight, but this will start us in there. Then this is a lead in to exactly what we're talking about, except we want to try to look at 281 in addition to this. Don't you wish you had a chairman that didn't give you so much homework? No comment.
Well, I already mentioned to you before, and I really think we need to get more into planning rather than zoning. Unless they have somebody on the city council that's doing the planning. Which, you know, there have been, well, you were on a committee that was related to planning. I think the planning needs to be coming through us also. And right now, it's like, I would like to find out from Texas Department of the textile. What ideas do they have with the traffic that's coming down from San Antonio with all that widening that they're doing, and coming to city limits? And where they're going with that. I would like to have somebody from textile come and make that presentation either to city council or to us, or I like it to have to us. And have them talk about it. It's just like what Brad was supposed to be getting us some new information. If he has contacts.
That we didn't get.
That we didn't get.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll be reviewing this. So I will contact the city council, or city hall administration office and see if we can get somebody from TechStop to come out to give us a review and what do we want them to specifically tell us, Flores?
I want to see what's going to happen when the widened highway comes down into 281 into our city limit. what's gonna happen with that? What's gonna happen with the mud? That's up there, well, this is gonna be coming to also.
You mean like turn lanes and things like that?
Well, are they gonna bypass?
Mhm.
Are we gonna have a bypass?
Well, do you think they're gonna tell us that?
Well, I would sure hope somebody would.
I don't think the mud issue has been,
No, I'm not.
has been put to bed. And I don't know that today, I don't know that the text guy is gonna tell us if they're gonna do a bypass. Let me see if I can get some information from the city administration,
Okay.
and I'll see what they have, and I'll email. I can email it to you, I can email to you the specifics of what they have, but I can't have a conversation with you about it until the next time.
Yeah.
So you would be able to look at that information and then come back next meeting and we can discuss it. But we can't have a discussion until we have it open to the public. So everybody keep in mind that we have to go by these open meeting rules and be careful that when you send an email, you send it only to the sender. You do not send it to all. Make sure that you do that. Don't have a discussion. You can't call Chris and then you call Lars and then you call Trey. Can't do that. It's against the Open Meetings Act. You can have one person that you're talking to about a subject, but you can't go any further than that. So if you talk to the wrong person, you just have to hold your tail till next time.
Yeah.
So I'm just bringing that up because we do not want to get back down because of that issue. But I will try to get that information and then I'll disperse it to everyone for you to read, and then we can discuss it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Is that it? What do y'all, do I have a motion?
Well, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Chris and Lois second.
Yeah.
Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you, Brendan, for checking in. Thank you, Connie, for
No problem. Y'all have a good night.
contribution.
By the way, just FYI, the TechStart after 3.5